"Dad, can we get cotton candy now?" Vincent pulled on Camden's sleeve, his small voice cutting through the hum of laughter, carnival music, and the smell of fried dough floating in the air. Camden Turner crouched beside his 7-year-old son, brushing a strand of hair from the boy's forehead. "We just got here, bud. Let's hit the games first, yeah." Vincent's grin stretched wide, revealing the gap where his front tooth used to be. Camden stood, his worn boots crunching against gravel. He adjusted the strap of his torn backpack over his shoulder, eyes scanning the fairgrounds. It wasn't much, but it was free admission today, and he'd saved up enough for a couple rides and maybe a snack. It was all he could give right now, and he hated how little that felt sometimes. He hadn't planned on coming. Between working double shifts at the auto shop and dealing with overdue bills, Camden barely had time to breathe. But Vincent had seen the flyer taped to the laundromat door and begged, so here they were. "All right," Camden said, fishing a few crumpled bills from his pocket. "But only one game, okay?" Vincent nodded eagerly and darted toward the ring toss booth. Camden followed, keeping close. The fair was packed families, couples, teenagers, all buzzing with energy. And then, across the lane, he saw her. She stood out like a diamond in a gravel pit. A woman in white sneakers, jeans that probably cost more than his monthly rent, and a simple tank top. Yet something about her posture, the confidence in her stance, the way people seemed to step aside without her asking it screamed money. Not flashy, quiet, controlled, but she was smiling genuinely at a little girl who had just won a teddy bear twice her size. Then she turned, her eyes landing on Camden, and she didn't look away. He quickly glanced down, pretending to fix his son's cap, but when he looked up again, she was walking toward him. "Hi," she said, her voice smooth and friendly, but not forced. "You looked like you could use a second pair of hands." Camden blinked. I'm good, thanks. I meant with your son. I didn't mean sorry, that came out weird." She laughed, then held out a hand. "I'm Rowan." He shook it, trying not to feel embarrassed about the grease still under his nails. "Camden, that's Vincent." Vincent barely noticed, too focused on trying to land a ring around a glass bottle. "He's adorable," Rowan said, leaning down to smile at the boy. "How many tries do you get?" "3, Camden said. "One more left." Vincent tossed. It bounced off the rim. "Almost," Rowan said, clapping. "You've got great aim." Vincent beamed like she'd just handed him a trophy. Camden shoved his hands into his pockets, awkward. "Thanks for cheering him on." Rowan tilted her head. "You too close." Camden raised a brow. "He's my son." Rowan's eyes widened slightly, then softened. "Oh, that's really sweet. I mean, I don't see a lot of dads taking their kids out on their own." He shrugged. "I make time for him, no matter what." Rowan smiled, but there was something in her eyes, curiosity, maybe even admiration. "Listen," she said, I just bought too many game tokens, like way too many. Would Vincent want a few?" Camden stiffened. "We're okay, it's not charity," she said quickly. "I promise. I just don't want them to go to waste." Camden looked down at Vincent, who was staring at the tokens in her hand like they were gold bars. He sighed. "All right, but just a few." Rowan handed over 5, and Vincent's eyes lit up. "Thank you," he said, already running to the next booth. Camden watched him go, then turned to Rowan. "You didn't have to do that. I wanted to." There was a beat of silence between them. The fair buzzed on around them, the clanging of bells, the laughter, the music. But in that moment, it felt quieter. "So," Camden said, folding his arms, "what brings you to a small town fair with too many tokens?" Rowan glanced away like she was trying to find the right answer. "Honestly, I needed a break from work, life, everything." "Same," they both laughed. They didn't say much after that, just followed Vincent around as he played more games. Rowan cheered for him every time, and Camden couldn't help but notice how naturally she spoke to his son. She wasn't trying too hard, wasn't faking smiles. She was just kind. After an hour, they ended up near the food stands. "I owe you a snack," Camden said, surprising himself. Rowan raised a brow. "Are you asking me on a fair date?" He chuckled. "More like saying thank you for making my kid's day better." Rowan smiled. "In that case, I'd like a funnel cake." They shared one, sitting on a bench while Vincent played with his new plastic sword. Camden kept waiting for her to drop some clue like a fancy watch or a name drop that revealed who she really was, but she didn't. She was just Rowan. And when she laughed, really laughed head back, eyes crinkled. He felt something shift in his chest. He hadn't felt that in a long time. Vincent eventually yawned, and Camden knew it was time to go. "Thanks again," he said, standing. Rowan stood too. "I hope I see you again, Camden." He hesitated. "You live around here?" "Not exactly," she said, pulling out a pen and scribbling something on a napkin. "But I'm in town for a bit. This is where I'm staying." He took the napkin. It was the name of a hotel he knew was expensive. Way out of his league. She smiled once more, then turned, disappearing into the crowd. Camden looked down at Vincent, who was already half asleep in his arms. He looked back at the napkin. There was no phone number. No last name, just Rowan and the name of the hotel. And for the first time in years, Camden felt something strange, hope. The next morning, Camden was elbow-deep in the guts of a rusted-out Dodge. Grease streaked across his forearms when his boss leaned through the garage bay door. "Cam, there's someone asking for you out front." Camden wiped his hands on a rag, frowning. "A customer?" "Nope," the man said, chewing on a toothpick. "She said her name's Rowan." Camden froze. He hadn't expected to see her again, especially not here. He pulled off his gloves and headed outside, his heart thudding a little harder than it should have. Rowan stood on the cracked sidewalk in front of the shop, sunglasses pushed to the top of her head, holding 2 large paper cups. She handed him one. "Coffee," she said. "The guy inside looked ready to throw me out, so I figured I better make it quick." Camden took the cup. "How'd you find me?" she shrugged. "Small towns talk. I asked the front desk clerk at the hotel if she knew a guy named Camden with a son named Vincent. She pointed me here." He sipped the coffee, surprised it was exactly how he liked it. "You tracked me down for this?" "No," she admitted. "I was hoping we could talk, if you're not working on something urgent." He glanced back at the garage. "Give me 10 minutes. Rowan waited across the street near a bus bench while he wrapped up the last of the diagnostics. When he returned, she was perched on the bench, watching a group of high schoolers pass by with skateboards. "This is definitely not your usual crowd," Camden said, sitting beside her. "You assume a lot." He raised a brow. "You're staying at the most expensive hotel in town, and you showed up at a greasy auto shop with custom espresso." She grinned. "Okay, fair, but I like seeing places for what they really are. Not just through glass windows and room service menus." Camden studied her. "So what are you really doing here?" She hesitated. "I'm supposed to be in New York right now. Board meetings, gala events." "My assistant's losing her mind. You skipped all that for a small town fair." "I didn't come for the fair." She turned to look at him. "I needed to be around something real." Camden looked away, unsure what to say to that. The last time someone had called him real, it was followed by a breakup and a slammed door. "I'm not exactly great company," he said. "I disagree. You're honest, you don't pretend, and you care about your kid more than anything." He didn't respond. Instead, he watched a delivery truck struggle to turn down the narrow road. Rowan leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "I grew up with everything. Trust funds, private schools, vacations on islands I couldn't pronounce, but all anyone ever cared about was how things looked. Not how they felt." Camden finally looked at her. "So what, you came here to feel something?" "Something like that." She stood, brushing imaginary dust from her jeans. "I'm heading to the farmer's market in an hour. Want to come?" He blinked. "With you?" "Yes, with me." "Unless you've got better plans." "I've got Vincent. Bring him." Camden hesitated. "He's got homework." "Then we'll make it quick. Just a walk, some fresh air, no pressure." He stared at her, unsure where this was going or why he wasn't saying no. "All right. But if you try to sneak him candy, I'm out." She smiled. "Deal." Later that afternoon, the three of them strolled between rows of fresh produce and homemade soaps. Vincent held Rowan's hand, chattering about the wooden sword he'd won. Rowan listened like every word mattered. Camden watched from behind, his arms crossed loosely. He wasn't used to seeing anyone mesh so quickly with his son. Most people kept their distance, unsure how to act around a single dad. As they paused to look at honey jars, Rowan leaned over to Vincent. "Pick one. Anyone." "It's on me." Camden stepped forward. "Hey, I said no candy." "Honey isn't candy," Rowan said. "It's technically a natural sweetener." Vincent grinned up at them, already clutching a jar with a bear-shaped lid. Camden sighed. "You're dangerous." "I've been told that before," she said lightly. They ended up sitting on a nearby bench. Vincent, busy with a fresh sketch pad Rowan had somehow conjured from her bag. "She's good with him," Camden said suddenly, watching Rowan help Vincent adjust the position of his hand. "She," Rowan said, glancing over, "is sitting right here," he laughed under his breath. "Sorry," Rowan tilted her head. "You don't let people in easily, do you?" "Not really." "Why?" "Because they leave." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she watched Vincent draw. "You know what's funny? I've had every kind of relationship money can buy, but I've never had someone look at me like I wasn't a transaction." Camden nodded slowly. "Well, get ready. Small towns don't do subtle. People are going to ask questions. Let them." He studied her again. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way she crouched to look Vincent in the eyes when he spoke, she didn't feel like someone passing through anymore. "I should get him home," he said after a while. "Dinner, bath, the usual." Rowan stood. "Can I walk with you?" Camden hesitated. "You really don't have anything better to do?" "No," she said softly. "I don't." They walked in comfortable silence, Vincent skipping ahead, sword in one hand and honey in the other. When they reached the small duplex Camden rented, Rowan stopped at the sidewalk. "This is me," he said. She looked up at the modest building. "Can I see the drawing before I go?" Vincent held it up proudly. It was a shaky sketch of the three of them standing at the fair. Rowan's figure wore a crown. "I don't remember wearing that," she said. "I made you a queen," Vincent said. "You're nice." Something flickered across her face, gone before Camden could name it. "You're a great artist," she said, then looked at Camden. "Maybe I'll see you tomorrow," he lifted a shoulder. "Depends on work." "I'll be around." She turned and walked away, not looking back. Camden watched her go, wondering how someone so far removed from his world could feel like the missing piece of it. Vincent tugged his sleeve. "Dad." "Yeah, is she gonna be my friend forever?" Camden crouched beside him. "I don't know, buddy, maybe." Vincent nodded like that was enough. Camden stood again, but his eyes stayed fixed on the street where Rowan had disappeared. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, he wanted to find out. The next 3 days passed with a quiet kind of tension Camden couldn't explain. He hadn't seen Rowan since she'd walked away from his porch, but she stayed in his thoughts like a shadow that never quite faded. Every time his phone buzzed, he half expected it to be her, even though she'd never given him a number. Every trip through town felt like a coin toss. Was today the day she'd show up again on Thursday afternoon? As the sky threatened rain and the air turned thick with summer heat, Camden clocked out early from the garage. The owner owed him a few hours from last week, and Vincent had been asking about the community art show at the library for days. It was free. A win in their world. Camden held the door open as Vincent rushed inside the small brick building, his sketch pad clutched under one arm. The local librarian, a woman in her 60s with a sharp braid and a sharper memory, waved them toward the back where a collection of children's artwork was pinned to folding boards. "Yours is already hanging up," she said to Vincent. Near the window, Vincent dashed off, leaving Camden to trail behind at a slower pace. He hadn't even rounded the corner when a familiar voice filtered through the low hum of the room. "You didn't tell me he was this good." Camden stopped short. Rowan stood in front of Vincent's drawing like it was hanging in a museum gallery. Her hair was swept up into a loose knot, and she wore a navy blazer over a plain white tee paired with jeans and ankle boots. Nothing flashy, but the kind of understated elegance that still made people glance twice. "I didn't expect you here," Camden said as he stepped beside her. "I called the library this morning," she replied without looking at him. "Asked if they had any events worth seeing. They said a boy named Vincent Turner had a piece in the children's show. You tracked him down through the library. I like being prepared." He studied her. "This feel real enough for you?" Rowan finally turned to him. "I didn't come to be entertained. I came because I wanted to see something made with heart, and your son has more of that than most adults I know." Vincent noticed her then and ran over. "You came?" Rowan crouched to his level. "I wouldn't miss it." He beamed and grabbed her hand, tugging her toward another board. "Come see this one. It's mine too. It's a dragon but made of clouds." Camden watched them go, something tightening in his chest that had nothing to do with nerves and everything to do with how easily Rowan fit into their strange, modest world. After the show, they ducked outside just as the first drops of rain began to fall. Camden pulled his hood up and looked down at Vincent. "We've got time before dinner," he said. "Want to grab something warm?" Rowan glanced up. "I know a place across town. They make cinnamon rolls the size of your head." Vincent's eyes lit up, and before Camden could object, she was already leading them to a sleek black car parked at the curb. Not a limo, not a sports car, just expensive without announcing itself. "I'll drive," she said, unlocking it. Camden hesitated. "You sure?" "I've navigated worse traffic than this." As they drove, Camden noticed the subtle tech woven into the car's design, nothing flashy but everything precise. The dashboard was built into the console like it belonged in a luxury jet, and the leather seats felt like they'd never known a stain in their life. The cafe she mentioned was tucked into the edge of a residential street, upscale, but quiet. Inside, the smell of cinnamon and clove wrapped around them like a blanket. They found a corner booth, and Rowan ordered without hesitation 3 hot chocolates, 2 cinnamon rolls, and something off menu the barrister recognized immediately. "You're a regular?" Camden asked once they were seated. Rowan shrugged. "I fund their scholarship program. They let me name a pastry." He blinked. "Of course you do." She met his gaze without apology. "You don't have to keep pretending you don't have questions." "I don't pretend, then ask." Vincent was busy with the whipped cream on his cocoa, so Camden leaned in slightly. "What do you actually do?" "I own a private equity firm." Camden stared at her. "A what?" "It's like a company that buys other companies," she explained. "We invest, restructure, and sell after making them profitable." He exhaled slowly. "So you're rich?" "Yes," she said simply. "Very." "How rich?" Rowan tilted her head. "Does it matter?" He looked away. "I don't know. Probably. I grew up with money, but I built my own. I've worked since I was 20, built the company from the ground up. I didn't inherit it. But yes, I can afford more than cinnamon rolls." Vincent's voice cut through before Camden could respond. "Dad, can she come over for dinner sometime?" Camden blinked. "You've barely finished your cocoa." "But she's cool," Vincent said earnestly. "And she listens." Rowan smiled, but this time it was softer, less polished. "I'd like that," she said. "If it's all right with your dad." Camden looked between them and felt something shift, not like a decision being made, but like a door slowly opening. He nodded once. "All right, tomorrow night, but it won't be fancy." Rowan met his eyes. "I'm not looking for fancy." Later, when he tucked Vincent into bed, Camden stood in the doorway for a long time, thinking about the day. About the way Rowan had looked at his son's drawing like it was priceless. About how she'd spoken the truth without dressing it up. About how she hadn't once made him feel small, despite the canyon between their worlds. He stared at the napkin still pinned to the fridge, the same one she'd handed him at the fair, now curling at the edges. For the first time, he wasn't just wondering if he'd see her again. He was planning for it. By the time Rowan stepped onto the porch the next evening, dusk had painted the sky in violet hues, and the chirp of cicadas buzzed through the warm air. She held a covered dish in her hands, faint steam curling from its edges. The screen door creaked open before she could knock. Camden stood there, his sleeves rolled to the elbow and an apron tied haphazardly around his waist. A fleck of tomato sauce clung to his wrist. "I didn't think you'd actually bring something," he said, stepping aside. "I don't show up empty-handed," Rowan replied, handing him the dish. "It's my grandmother's recipe. I had the hotel kitchen make it." He raised a brow. "You had them make it, but it's still your recipe," I supervised. Camden gave a half laugh and led her inside. The living room was small but warm. A single lamp lit the space beside the couch where Vincent sat on the floor, bent over a jigsaw puzzle. He looked up and grinned. "You're here." "I told you I would be," Rowan said, crouching beside him. "You almost done?" "I'm stuck on the sky." She sat down without hesitation and examined the scattered pieces. Camden watched from the kitchen doorway, the dish now resting on the counter beside a pot of bubbling sauce and a tray of garlic bread that looked dangerously close to overdone. He checked the oven and called out, "Dinner's almost ready. Hope you're okay with baked ziti." Rowan turned her head. "I supervised that dish too, remember?" The meal came together quicker than he expected. They ate at the small table by the window, Rowan seated across from Camden, Vincent between them. Conversation flowed easily. Vincent told her about the comic book he was writing with a friend from school, complete with hand-drawn villains and a flying goat sidekick. Rowan listened intently, asking questions that made him beam with pride. After dinner, while Camden cleared the plates, Rowan wandered to the bookshelf beside the couch. Her fingers hovered over the spines before she pulled one free. "You keep poetry next to car manuals," she said as he came up behind her with a towel in hand. "Balance," he said. "I read when I can't sleep." She flipped open the book, eyes scanning the page. "Did you write any of these?" He shook his head. "I wish. Then write your own," she said, closing it. "You've got a voice, it's quiet, but it carries." He leaned against the armrest. "That's the nicest backhanded compliment I've ever gotten." It wasn't backhanded. Vincent appeared in the hallway, rubbing his eyes. "I'm tired," he mumbled. Camden scooped him up effortlessly. "All right, time for bed." Rowan stood. "Can I say good night?" Vincent nodded sleepily and wrapped his arms around her neck when she knelt beside him. "Thanks for coming." She kissed the top of his head. "Thanks for sharing your puzzle." Camden carried him down the short hallway, disappearing into the bedroom. Rowan stayed where she was, her hand resting on the back of the couch, gaze distant. When Camden returned, he didn't speak right away. He just stood in the doorway, watching her. "What?" she asked softly. "You're not what I expected." She turned. "What did you expect?" He walked forward, stopping only a foot away. "Someone who'd get bored, someone who'd check their watch and disappear." "I thought about leaving," she admitted, "after the first day. But I didn't." "Why not?" "Because I haven't felt this anchored in years." He studied her face, the way the light framed the curve of her jaw. "You know this can't be casual." "I don't do casual." He looked down. "I can't offer you yachts or private jets." She stepped closer. "I don't want those things from you. I already have them. I want something I can't buy." He met her eyes again, something raw flickering in his own. "I don't know how to live in your world." "Then don't," she said. "Live in yours." "I'll meet you there." He reached for her hand, fingers brushing hers. "I haven't let anyone in since my ex left. Not really." Rowan's voice dropped. "I know what it's like to be abandoned. My parents used money to disappear without ever leaving the room." His hand closed around hers. "I don't want to be your escape." "You're not," she said. "You're the first thing I've run toward." The air between them shifted, heavy with something unspoken. Then Camden leaned in and Rowan met him halfway. The kiss was unhurried, grounded, like the beginning of something neither of them had expected but both of them had needed. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "I'm not going back to New York, at least not yet." He exhaled slowly. "What about your company?" "I can run it from anywhere. I already do, but I'm done living in boardrooms and hotel rooms. I want mornings with coffee and bad cartoons. I want dinners that end in puzzles." Camden laughed under his breath. "You'll get bored of this. You're underestimating how long I've been bored of everything else." They stood in silence for a moment, the rhythm of the house settling around them in the quiet hum of the fridge, the distant creak of settling wood. Then Rowan took Camden's hand and led him back to the couch. "Read me one of your favorite poems," she said, settling beside him. He reached for the book she'd pulled earlier and opened it carefully. As he read, her hand stayed in his, grounding them both in something that felt new but inevitable. Weeks passed. Rowan stayed, not in the hotel but in town. She rented a modest house on the same street, walked to the local market, learned the names of the neighbors. Camden watched her build a life not out of necessity but choice. She took Vincent to school when Camden worked mornings. She brought over groceries she didn't ask to be paid for, and when she found a vacant lot on the edge of town, she asked Camden if he'd ever wanted to open his own garage. "I wouldn't know where to start," he said. "I do," she replied. "We can start together." The lot became theirs. The sign out front read Turner & Co. Auto. A year later, they hosted a block party in the parking lot for Vincent's 8th birthday. Rowan wore jeans and a t-shirt with oil smudged on the hem. Camden grilled burgers while holding a lemonade in one hand and a wrench in the other. That night, after the guests had gone, Camden brought Rowan to the rooftop above the garage. Strings of lights swayed in the breeze, casting soft golden halos across the gravel. "I was thinking," he said, pulling something from his pocket. She turned. "I don't have a diamond that could compete with anything in your collection." he said, opening a small velvet box. Inside was a simple silver ring etched with 3 initials. But I've got this, and a life. And a son who already thinks you hung the moon. Rowan's eyes filled, but she didn't speak. I'm not promising yachts or Paris or anything shiny, he continued. Just us, here, real. She took the ring and slid it on, her voice steady. You've already given me more than I ever had before. He pulled her close, and as they stood beneath the swaying lights, Camden realized that sometimes the richest kind of love wasn't loud or lavish. It was found in small things, in second chances, in cinnamon rolls and comic books. And in a woman who had everything, but chose the one thing she couldn't buy them. The breeze carried the scent of cedar and fresh-cut grass as Rowan stood barefoot in the middle of the backyard, her toes sinking into the warm earth. The sun hung low, casting long shadows across the fence. From the open window, the sound of Vincent humming drifted out, followed by the soft clatter of puzzle pieces. Camden stepped outside, drying his hands on a faded dish towel. He's almost done with that sky section. Rowan smiled without turning. He said he's naming the goat after you. That feels unfair. I'm not nearly that majestic, she laughed, but it was softer than usual, thoughtful. It's almost been a year. Camden moved beside her, sliding his arm around her waist. I know. I didn't think I'd stay this long, she said. I didn't think I could. You don't have to keep proving you belong here, you know. I'm not trying to prove anything anymore. It still surprises me how much I needed this. Camden pressed a kiss to her temple. You built something real here, not just with me. The town loves you. You've got half the community garden named after you now, and the other half after your son, she said with a grin. I think we've officially taken over. They sat down on the small bench beneath the maple tree, the same one Camden had built when Vincent was 4, out of leftover scrap wood and stubborn determination. Rowan rested her head on his shoulder, her fingers tracing lazy circles on his knee. He glanced at her. There's something I've been thinking about. Should I be nervous? I want to make it official, not just the garage, us, all of it. She raised her head slowly. We already have the ring, I know, but I want to do it properly. No rooftop lights, no speeches. Just you, me, and him. Tomorrow at the courthouse, she blinked. You're serious? I've never been more sure of anything. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Yes, of course, yes. The next morning, the 3 of them stood in front of the county courthouse. Rowan wore a soft cream dress with sleeves that fluttered in the breeze, and Camden had traded his work shirt for a crisp white button-down, sleeves rolled with practiced ease. Vincent stood between them, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers he'd picked himself. The ceremony was short. The vows, quiet but powerful. As the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Rowan's fingers trembled slightly in Camden's hand, not from nerves, but from the sheer weight of the moment. Outside, they were met with a surprise. The entire street had been lined with neighbors, friends, and even customers from the garage. Someone had spilled the news. There were balloons tied to mailboxes, folding tables with homemade cupcakes, and children holding signs with glittered letters that read, "Congratulations, Turner family." Rowan stared. You planned this, Camden shook his head. This one wasn't me. A familiar voice called out from the crowd. We just figured someone had to throw a party if you weren't going to. The cafe owner from across town waved from behind a stack of cinnamon rolls. The day unfolded in laughter and music. Rowan danced barefoot on the pavement with Vincent while Camden leaned against a light post, arms crossed, heart full. She twirled the boy once, then caught Camden's gaze and beckoned him forward. He joined them, his hands finding hers effortlessly. They moved without rhythm, without care, just a tangle of arms and joy under the wide-open sky. Later that evening, long after the music had faded and the tables had been cleared, the 3 of them sat on the back porch. Vincent curled up between them, fast asleep beneath a woven blanket. Rowan tilted her head back, watching the stars blink to life. I used to think love had to be difficult, like it only counted if it came with chaos. Camden brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. And now I know the best kind is the kind that stays. The kind that builds and roots and doesn't flinch when things get hard. He kissed her slowly, deeply, the weight of everything they'd become between them. You're home now, Rowan, and I'll never let you forget it. She rested her head on his chest. Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. Seasons passed. The garage expanded, adding 2 new bays and a waiting room with actual furniture. Rowan hosted weekend art classes in the community center. Vincent's comic book got picked by a local publisher, and at school, he won the Kindest Kid award 2 years in a row. They adopted a mutt from the shelter who refused to answer to anything but Captain Biscuit. Every night, Rowan and Camden walked hand in hand through town, past the bookstore, the cafe, the park where they'd taken Vincent to fly kites. They didn't talk about what could have been or what they'd left behind. They didn't need to. They had everything they needed right here, a life they built, a love that stayed, a family that chose each other every single day.